So we spent our afternoon at the studio on 45 Casco Street with singer and songwriter Paula Cole.
Her career has followed an interesting path. Beginning in the 1990s pop culture, Cole fought to keep her own voice throughout. She even chose to walk away when she realized it was hurting her personal life.
Back in the recording studio and touring New England, Cole finally has the album she always wanted to make. We spoke with her about that and what got her into the industry in the first place, including the influence of her father, who played bass in a polka band in Connecticut.
There you go.
I mean, that's a lot of groove to hold down. If you've listened to polka, it's very intense dance music. So he had natural rhythm. He had great ears. He could play piano. He could play harmonica, banjo, guitar. He was just gifted that way. And I grew up with this Renaissance man who was very smart and driving and made me good at whatever I did. and I learned that music was fun and music was self-made. So I learned that so largely from my dad. My mom was also very musical, so they would sing together, lots of duets, and she has a beautiful voice. She can play piano. She's got a great ear. Music has been in my family for generations, and I think that informs me. I think I have the unfulfilled dreams of many former family members that didn't get to, especially the women, they didn't get to have their dream or their voice. And I was very aware of that.
Even before you released your first album, you had Peter Gabriel calling you and asking you to be on his tour.
That's so crazy, I know.
What was that moment like?
Peter just left a message on my my reel-to-reel little mini tape machine recorder, analog days, right? With it, that was Peter. It's Peter, leaving a message asking if I would join the tour, just like that, just point blank. And I did. And I flew to Mannheim, Germany on Halloween of 1993. And I had one rehearsal with Peter. I sang Don't Give Up with Peter, with my idol. And then was thrown in front of 16,000 Germans that night. And it was preparation meets, hard work and an opportunity. And we shot the video, which is a beautiful video, and won a Grammy just a few days later after that.
Okay, album number 2. Self-produced. Is that an album that you're more proud of because of the hard work that went into it, or?
I guess I'm proud that I stayed true to the small voice inside, and it was hard to self-advocate in those times of big labels, big record deals, big budgets, pressure for hits, and not many women at all on the playing fields, either in an engineering capacity or a production capacity. And so I would, first of all, I had to throw away money spent with initial attempt at my second album. And I had to go to Warner Brothers and say, hear this music we just made? Well, I need to throw it away, and I'd like to start again, and I'd like to produce it myself. And they let me. I then had to convince the smaller label, the imprint label, to do it, and that was hard. And there was a lot of sexism in that area, a lot of difficulty. But I did it under budget. I got good deals. I made a ton of phone calls. I interviewed a lot of engineers, because I needed a right arm engineer. And it was interesting how so many men in that moment of interview just assumed that I was interviewing them to be my producer, Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, in a very kind of, with an infantilizing tone, like that whole thing. Like, actually, no, I want to produce it myself. And there was one gent, only one, who just immediately got what I wanted, and his name was Roger Moutinho, and he's a beautiful man, and he made beautiful sounds. And yeah, I think he worked with Slater Kinney, and many other, Yola Tango, and so more like indie rock, interestingly. And so Roger and I went into the studio, and my drummer Jay Bellarose from Maine, from Old Orchard Beach, Maine, who was my musical right arm. And we recorded the basics for this Fire in about a day and a half, and all the vocals. And then we brought in the other musicians, Tony Levin on bass and Greg Leese on guitar. And it was all made in about a week's time. I did it under budget because I knew what I needed. I had to. The fire was on me. I needed to come under budget because of the situation I was in, which was examination and lack of trust.
Right.
And I did it, and I'm proud for that. Do I think it's better than any other album? Not necessarily. They're all my children, I love them all in a different way. So I'm just so glad that I spoke up for myself.
It must have felt good too. I mean, you had immense success off of that album. It must have felt good to say, look, I did this.
It was a trip. I can't even describe it, like a magical mystery tour. I was just perpetually on tour and perpetually doing things. Radio shows and radio visits and meet and greets and, you know, photo shoots and gigs. And meanwhile, the song is charting, and then meanwhile, oh my gosh, I hear it playing in that car radio over there, and oh my gosh, someone's walking by me with their headphones and I hear my song. It's so weird, you know. And it was incredible. It was incredible because it felt like hope and possibility, and that what I did mattered. Why do we do music in the first place? It really is what you need to come to, and that is for the finding of feelings and the expression of feelings, for the release of the feelings and the healing that happens, the healing. And therefore, when I do that and I feel a little better in my soul because I've made some of that work, I realize that other people are also experiencing that healing and that connection to emotion.
Okay, ballads.
Ballads is an album I wanted to make for about my whole career because I started as a jazz singer. That's what I wanted to be. I wanted to improvise like Chet Baker. I wanted to be a female Chet Baker. And I tried, and I hated what was coming out of my mouth. I was very mean to myself. I didn't like it, and because there's geniuses like Ella, and then there's nobody else really. And so I sang in a lot of jazz clubs, and I sang at the airport, you know, Boston Airport, Hilton, on Thursday nights with Al Vega. I had my book, and I sang a lot of jazz. But more importantly than all that is that I loved the music. That was a part of me. Those big melodies, the incredibly emotional ballads. And I've really spent so much of my life there worshiping and listening to this music. And I've been offered 2 record deals to sing a jazz, you know, to make a jazz album. And they would try to make me into something that felt ill-fitting. So I would say, nope, I don't want to do this. The first time was while I was still in college. And the last time was in 2011 or 12 it was, with Blue Note. And I just didn't want to be too slick. And I didn't actually, I'm not playing piano, and I didn't want it to be piano driven. I wanted it to be guitar driven and rootsy, more like Wes Montgomery, with a rootsy rhythm section. And to cross genres, bring in some folksy, rootsy melodies, like bring in a little Bob Dylan. You know, Nina Simone covered Bob Dylan. It should be mixed. I don't like these borders and these walls between musical styles. So I have Bobby Gentry, and I have Nina Simone, and I'm honoring Billie Holiday and Coltrane, and then, oops, there's Bob Dylan, right? So it's all mixed in a very rootsy way.
I just have to say, we spent a couple of hours with her, and she's such a wonderful woman for giving us that time. But I don't know, chalk it up to the fact that she was raised well in New England, but she genuinely was a down-to-earth person. What you see is what you get with her. It was great.
Really, and she just has so much to talk about. I can imagine you could have talked for many more hours.
We talked for a little while, so we'll have a little bit more on that. Now, if you grew up in the 90s, you remember the song I Don't Want to Wait, that theme song to the hit show Dawson's Creek. Not only did she play that for us, but she explained how it almost hurt her career. So we're going to bring all of that to you next week on 207.